Awesome. We have Anthony Rhodes and Jeff Foley today presenting on a tool called Amass. And if you're a bug bounty hunter who doesn't know what Amass is, you're about to be in for a treat. If you are, I'm hoping that we learn a little bit more about the tool that kind of we all use and its functions and features. Amass is one of the tools in the recon methodology that I talk about in the bug hunters methodology that usually I give every year or every 2 years. And it is a awesome DNS enumeration tool. It is one of kind of, I think, the biggest advents. The first kind of one that set us off in this kind of thing of subdomain scraping was Sublister. So all of the props in the world for the maintainers of the Sublister project. But then shortly after Amass came out, and some others, and Amass is one that I use in my tool set when I'm doing bug bounty hunting almost every day now. It's almost become as ubiquitous as Nmap to me, finding hosts with Amass and using some of the features as well, some of the unknown other tools buried inside of Amass as well. So I'm super happy to have Jeff and Anthony here with us today to talk about Amass. And guys, thank you so much for being here. And I'm so glad that you're joining us. And I'll let you guys take it away.
Thank you very much, Jason. With that, I'd like to start by thanking everyone that contributes to the Amass program, which I think we have 13 contributors now, some of which are focused on development, some testing, some documentation. I mean, they spend quite a bit of their time supporting this project, and also, of course, all the people that are using it, like Jason, and all the support we get from the community, the great feedback, the encouragement to keep making it better. So it's everyone that's involved that makes it possible. And with that feedback, we've been getting a lot of great questions about some of the new features and the configuration options. And, it's gotten potentially a little bit more complicated to take full advantage of it. So that's what we're going to focus on today is Anthony's put together or tailored this material to address those questions that we've been getting from the community. Next slide. All right. So I'm Jeff Foley. I have a long history of working with cyber warfare. And when I came to doing more commercial work, and I had a lot of clients that needed this, they needed visibility. They needed to understand their exposure better. And it just became something that I did all the time when I was engaged with these clients. I realized that the community was missing a tool like this, a complete tool that could make this easy and not break it up into several steps that had to be, scripted and all the data parsed and normalized and put together. I figured it was time to just have one tool that could do all this. So that's what got this project started. It was just me at first because I wrote it for myself, but it was less than a year, OWASP asked me if I would like to make it an OWASP project. And then I was honored to accept their invitation. Some people have asked me if this is what I do all day. It's not. Just the other night, actually, someone asked me if I'm paid to develop Amass, and that would be nice, but I'm not. I told the person who asked me, I said, I'm just a nice guy. But my day job is I do management of offensive security services. Right now it's with National Grid, but I've been doing that kind of work for quite a while. And if you didn't already know, you can find me at these two locations to ask questions about Amass or reach us for if you're interested in becoming a contributor. Let's see. Next slide. All right. So the person who's going to share all this information with you today, though, is Anthony Rhodes. He's one of our greatest contributors. He's been spending a lot of time enhancing the Amass project. He also is on our team at National Grid. And he has a long history as well of doing this kind of work professionally. He's also a bug bounty hunter. So I think he really can understand where a lot of you are coming from and how you use this. And I think he was really the right person to tailor the material and deliver it to today. You can find him at these locations to ask more questions, engage this team. And with that, I would like to introduce Anthony Rhodes. He's going to take it away from here.
All right, thanks, Jeff. So yeah, today I'm going to be talking about the Amass project and how bug bounty hunters can leverage it to find bugs. So I've been doing pen testing a lot in the past 5 years, and one of the biggest issues, at least in the beginning of an engagement, is we get whatever scope the client gives us, and then we would do some quick enumerations to try to just see, just to validate it really. And a lot of times we'd end up finding more, and then we'd have to go back and see if everything was scoped right. So Amass really helps enumerating those extra names. So yeah, at least for bug bounty hunters, I know a lot of cases you can get like ambiguous scopes, everything under a certain domain. So Amass can really help enumerate those subdomains. So there's a number of other features, such as tracking, the changes between your enumerations and visualizing the findings as well. So let's look at your typical scope for an engagement. You might just get like a IP range. Like I said earlier, you could get a domain, maybe with a wildcard saying everything under this domain is in scope. This is the type of scope that Amass really shines with, because pretty much everything that comes out of Amass will be valid for this kind of scope. Whereas if you started out with a network range, you'd have to go back through and make sure that the resolved names match up with the network range. But then Amass can also accept some other different types of scopes. So if you want to just give it an organization name, say it's like a red team assessment, or you really just don't know anything about the organization yet, you can just give it the company name. And you can also give it an ASN number. I don't know if I've ever seen a scope with an ASN number, so but yeah, it's possible. Okay. Yeah, so let's dig into the architecture a little bit. So this is where Amass really differentiates itself from other tools that perform subdomain enumeration. Every resolved name gets fed back into the system, where alterations and recursive brute forcing can then be applied. The cycle then repeats itself until Amass can no longer find anything. Everything is then stored into a graph database which then can be later queried. Note about this is that if you do have a long-running enumeration, say you really gave it a huge brute force list, or you know, you went crazy on some of your alteration settings. If your enumeration is taking too long, you can kill it, but you'll still have all the results, the progress so far. And then the next time you run an enumeration, all those results get fed back in right in the beginning. So it's a really nice feature. So we have some frequently asked questions about the project. Can Amass handle DNS wildcards? Yes, this is a huge problem for subdomain enumeration. Some DNS servers will reply to any subdomain under a given root domain. So Amass can handle those. It's gotten better over the past year or two. If anyone ever has any issues where all of a sudden your enumeration just blows up because you know, it failed to detect a wildcard, you know, definitely hit us up on our Discord channel or on GitHub, because we really like to make sure that this feature is where it needs to be. Next most frequently asked question is, do we support rate limiting on how fast this thing can go? This is a more recent question. Historically, we've imposed our own artificial limits just in the architecture. Where we basically had defaults that users wouldn't be able to configure. And then, you know, we had people on both sides of the spectrum, people that are like, oh, I have, you know, a gigabit pipe, I really need this to go faster, or I have, you know, much more bandwidth, I really need this thing to fly. Or we had other people that have, you know, very small pipes, you know, I have to run it through this VPN connection, or I just don't have a good internet connection. And Amass was failing because everything was getting dropped, generating way too much traffic for their connection. So we ended up making that configurable, and I'll go into detail on certain, you know, how to set that configuration in the future. Final, most frequently asked question is, do we do alterations? Now, this is a feature that I worked on a lot this year, based on a lot of my pen testing experience. So a lot of organizations will have their, you know, their web server, www.google.com, and then, you know, they might have a dev server and a, you know, a prod server, and they'd be www-dev and -prod, or -UAT, you know, for testing, things like that. So what Amass can do, it'll take every resolved name and it'll try to, you know, append those suffixes, and it also does prefixes, and it also, if it notices any prefixes or suffixes, it'll like change those. So here's some more notes on alterations. It also flips numbers, adds numbers. So if it sees a 1, it'll change that through, you know, 1 through 10, or 1 through 9, and then a 0. It'll also try adding a number. So really, it'll turn 1 through 99. Like I said before, suffixes, prefixes, and swapping. Does fuzzy label searches, which really what that means is there's like 3 you know, basic operations: adding, subtracting, and swapping. And so it'll go through and it'll like perform one of those operations, you know, on a random character. So in this case, like, you know, randomly flipping the S in US to a K, UK, and you can see how that could generate some hits that wouldn't otherwise be generated. And then we have some artificial intelligence in here too, because why not? So we do a predictive Markov model. This can really help if you have a lot of names, especially longer names that follow like a given pattern. This can really help, you know, pull out all of the names that follow a certain pattern, because it's really good at, you know, learning based on the feedback it gets. So yeah, that's enough slides. Let's show off some of the tool. So for those familiar with Amass, this might look a little different. This weekend, we're going to be releasing the 3.0 version. So one of the biggest problems we've had with this project is that we have about 5 or so tools that are part of the Amass project, but everyone, or a lot of people, only use, you know, the main subdomain enumeration tool, and they didn't even know that other tools exist. So we decided to move everything into the Amass tool, and then you can execute the separate tools as subcommands. So yeah, for those that are familiar with the old tools, Amass.net domains is now Amass Intel. This is for discovering new root level domains. Amass proper is now Amass enum. This is for your, you know, subdomain enumeration. Amass.viz is now just under the viz subcommand. Amass.tracker is under the track subcommand, and Amass.db is under the db subcommand. So the first tool we're going to talk about is the Intel tool. So if you have like a single domain and you want to find other domains that are related to it, you know, say you give it, you know, OWASP.com, you wanted to see if that organization owns other domains that aren't subdomains off of that, then you would use this tool. You can give it addresses, ASNs, net blocks, an organization string. So in this case, we're starting off, we just have an organization, Utica College. So the Intel subcommand will give us the AS number, and then we can feed that back in, and it'll give us it'll take the AS number, grab the net blocks that are associated to that, and then reverse resolve those to grab out any root level domains that it can. And then it also does certificate grabbing. And you can specify the port as well to do that. So where it reaches out to like port 443 to grab a certificate, to see if we can pull a domain name out of that. So another good feature about this tool is that you can give it the -whois command or parameter, and it will then perform reverse whois lookups. And what a reverse whois query is there's many APIs, websites out there that offer this service. Basically, when you give it a domain, it'll take like the registrant email address out, or the registrant organization, and then it'll submit those as a query to these APIs. And then those APIs will return any domain that's registered under those same details. And in a lot of cases, this can really just explode your results. And this is also the primary reason why this isn't just automatically included in the subdomain enumeration subcommand, because a lot of times you might find that the domains in here aren't really related to your organization. So like a big example that I had in my past life as a pen tester is I saw an organization where the network admin was able, or he had registered business domains with the same email address as personal domains. So a bunch of his personal websites ended up in this enumeration. So yeah, definitely go through the output of this tool. If you have a CIDR range, you could also give it to this tool, and it'll perform the same thing. Basically, exactly what the ASN does, skipping the step of doing the ASN to NetBlock conversion. Yeah, now we'll go on to the meat and potatoes of the Amass tool, the math enum subcommand. So this is probably the one that most everyone is familiar with, because it does all the work. It has a number of command line flags. A lot of these can be set in configuration file. There are some exclusions to that, particularly like anything that changes the output, like the -IPv4 or the -IPv6, or the -demo. Those really, or yeah, -source. Those really just control what is printed out from the Amass tool. So you don't specify those in the config file. But most everything else can be specified on the command line, except for really advanced tweaking. There's a number of like alterations tweaks that cannot be specified on the command line. And that's just an effort to not have such a huge number of command line flags. As you can see, there's already plenty. So Amass pulls from a lot of OSINT data sources. And if you want to just ever get a list of what it's pulling from, you can give it the -list parameter. And that'll give you everything. You can see here, it's like 20 to 30. And you can also blacklist any of these. Say you just, don't want to be crawling archives, you can get rid of the archives. Say you don't want to hit virus total for whatever reason, you can just tell it to ignore its virus total. Or if you're just curious about like what Amass is going to be hitting, right? Other than the DNS resolvers you configure. This is just a good way to easily get that information. And especially because we are constantly adding to this list. If you're ever just curious of like anything new is added, definitely hit this parameter up. Alien Vault is one of our most recent ones, and that's definitely been really lucrative in terms of what it generates. So the -passive parameter will run Amass enum in passive mode, and this can be used as a dry run because what it does is it just reaches out to those sources that I mentioned on the previous slide. It doesn't do any active resolution, brute forcing, alterations, or anything like that. So this can be a good debugging tool, because if you think you are having like network issues, where maybe you configured this to be like pushing too much traffic. Then you can use this to just query the open source intelligence services, which shouldn't generate too much traffic at all. So yeah, once you do your dry run, then you can run it without passive. And what this does is it'll take, all the info from those sources, and then it tries to resolve them. It'll, by default, it'll perform alterations. You can tell it to do brute forcing. But still, like, the only thing it's really doing other than reaching out to the open source intelligence feeds is domain name resolution. So this is kind of a middle ground between a completely passive mode and like a fully active mode where you're actually generating queries against the target infrastructure, aside from the DNS servers. So yeah, there's a -active mode, which will include like certificate grabbing and zone transfers. You can give it a bunch of ports too. That's the truly active mode where you're actually targeting the IPs and your target infrastructure. So what can you do once you've done an enumeration and you want to look at the results? You can use the visualization tool under the viz subcommand. It can generate a number of different types of visualizations. I mean, they're all really just, visualizations of the graph database, because Amass keeps everything in this networked graph. So if you're familiar with the D3.js library, it can generate an HTML file that'll show, the graph. Or if you have, larger amount of results, you can do the Gephi or the graphistry options. Those are much better at handling huge numbers or huge graphs. And then if you want like some interactivity and you have a Maltego license, you can also have it output Maltego CSV, and then you can interactively play with the data. So this is an example of the D3.js visualization. The center right there would be OWASP.org. So your like root level domain is the reds. The green are your A records. The orange dots are all your IP addresses. The pink is your net blocks, and then the blue dots that all the pink go into are your ASNs. And then all the rest of the colors are just different DNS records, really. Cool. So, after you've taken a look at your data, the tracker tool can really help, give you like a brief summary of all the changes between, say, an enumeration you did several months ago to one you just did now. By default, it'll show the differences between the most recent enumeration and all the past ones. This, I think, is really a key feature for bug bounty hunters because, say you have, just a continuous window. You can just continuously run Amass, weekly, daily, whatever. Just keep running it, and then you could just run the tracker tool, and if you see any new added subdomains, bam, you just have another target. So this is an example of a couple the tracker output for some enumerations of OWASP.org. Not too particularly interesting in this case. It's really just showing that some of these are cloud resources and they swap IPs all the time. You can have it show the entire history, so it would be the differences of every enumeration. Okay. So then we have the database tool. And so say you have a lot of enumerations in your database. You can have this, you can give it the dash enum and then a number, and it'll show you the results of that particular enumeration. And if you want to know what numbers to use, then use the dash list flag. You can see that here. So you list all the enumerations. We have 3. Say I want to look at the first one. You specify that with a dash show, and then there it gives you all the output. So if you ever want to go back in time and view results, this is great. In the future, we're definitely looking to expand this tool to include a lot more database operations. Say you did have an enumeration where you immediately recognize that you messed up some configuration, so you kill it right away. Well, your tracker is going to be like, well, everything was removed from the most recent one to the last one because the most recent one didn't find anything. You killed it immediately. So eventually we're going to allow the database tool to handle those kind of situations where it'll allow you to delete the enumeration. So yeah, let's hop into the config file. By default, the output directory for Amass is just in your home directory. This is relatively new. Before, it was Amass output in your current working directory of wherever you're running Amass. Now it's just in the home directory unless you specify otherwise. Maximum DNS queries, like I said before, this is the simultaneous number of DNS queries that can be happening at any time. On your typical internet connection, I would say play with it, under 10,000. I mean, certainly try, whatever you want, but I think in our testing, under 10,000 has been pretty reliable. If you do have like a really bad connection, 100 might be a good point to start when you're troubleshooting or trying to figure out, like, really fine tune it to see how much your connection can handle. So then we have different sections for the different, functionalities of the enumeration. So to configure brute force, you would add a brute force section, and you can enable it. And then if you want to do recursive brute forcing, where that's if it finds a subdomain, it'll then try to brute force subdomains off of that subdomain, and it'll keep going as long as it can. Obviously, that's if you were just to do that by itself without any limits, it could go on forever, right? So we have a limiter in there, minimum for recursive. And what that does is when it's set to 3, as I have in the example here, it has to see 3 subdomains in a given position before it'll try to recurse to the next one deeper. So say you have like www.google.com. It needs like it needs to see 3 subdomains in the www field to be able to recurse beyond that to see if like dev.www.google.com exists. You can give it a word list file, and that's the word list that we use for brute forcing. By default, I think we use the word list that has a couple thousand words in it. Then we have the alterations configuration, and that's enabled by default. We have, so if you remember back to that slide where I talked about all the different types of alterations, you can turn on and off each one of those separately. If you want to just add suffixes and prefixes, and set add words to true. If you want to just do the numbers, add numbers, set that to true. If you don't want to do either of those, set those to false. Pretty straightforward. If you want to just do flipping instead of doing additive alterations, then there's options for that with flip words and flip numbers. You can also specify the word list. The default word list has about 200 of the most common prefixes, suffixes we've seen. And then for the fuzzy searches, you can set the edit distance, which that's really just the number of changes it'll make. Really, unless you, in the extreme case that you want to go crazy, you should probably keep this to one, because increasing it any higher will drastically increase the number of tries. And then we have the domains section where you can specify a domain or any number of domains, really. If you want to specify more domains, just add a new line, another domain key value pair underneath. So yeah, this is kind of like a more quiet profile for Amass. So say we want to do something a little more active. We bump up our DNS queries to 1,000, and we enable an active mode and set the port to 443. So it's grabbing like the most common port that you're serving SSL certificates on. We lower minimum for recursive, so it only needs to see 2 labels before it recurses deeper. And then we do the same thing for alteration. So it only needs to see 2 suffixes or prefixes before it starts flipping. So as you can see, like you can, really play with these settings to, achieve a good balance between taking forever and getting results. Now, if you really want to go crazy, you have a big pipe, you can set the DNS query to 10,000 at any given time. You can give it multiple word lists, and you don't have to worry about using like any bash foo to duplicate any duplicates in those word lists. Amass will take care of that all for you. So obviously a lot of your word lists are bound to have, duplicates amongst each other, because they're almost always built on most commonly seen values. And you can do the same thing for alterations. So yeah, that's about it for as far as like performance tweaking. Now I'm going to talk about resolvers, and this is a source of confusion, I think, for a lot of our users. It's also a pain point for the dev team, because some resolvers don't return accurate results. Some resolvers change the answers. I think like Cloudflare, Quad 9 offer some, protection against malicious domain features. They also seem to just answer incorrectly otherwise too. But an interesting note is that a lot of their secondary DNS servers don't have that censorship. Something we found interesting. So you'll see here, we have a lot of the secondaries for a lot of these.
Hey, just 1 second, Anthony. I'm going to fix this screen on the stream for you. Our screen on my end froze for a second, so I'm sorry for the interruption real quick. my Zoom, or sorry, the streaming software decided to stop showing your screen for a second. There we go. All right, now we're back. Sorry about that.
Okay, what was the last slide that we saw? What is the database?
It yeah, I think it was that one. Yeah. So I'm sorry about that.
Okay. Okay, well, good. So I'll just show off the last couple of slides I was talking to. No big deal. So yeah, quick recap for the past 10 minutes.
No, but
maximum DNS queries.
Yeah.
We have a brute force section, alteration section. You know, you can really tweak this stuff. And now I'm back to where we were. Yeah, so you can set any number of resolvers. Now, as you should be able to see, a lot of the primaries are missing because they don't give us good results. If you ever find a resolver in our default list, and this is the default list, by the way, that gives you incorrect results or inconsistent results from what you think should be there, definitely let us know. Again, Discord channel, GitHub issue. Let us know and we'll take care of it. Because we like to make sure that the results are, you know, accurate for the tool. Yeah, so we've had quite a few users really go crazy with this section. They really, so what Amass does is it spreads out all your DNS traffic over these resolvers. So, you know, the obvious next step is, you know, I can support more traffic if I just add more resolvers, right? People will add like over 1,000 resolvers to this list, which Amass can handle just fine, except for then we get the GitHub issue that says, oh, we ran out of sockets or we ran out of available file descriptors. That's because their system was configured with a really low limit for file descriptors. Amass opens the socket for every resolver that you configure. So just make sure that your system is configured to support that. Yeah. We have a number of features that you can really tweak for the, you know, setting your scope. You know, say you want to do certificate pulling, but you only want to reach out to certain ports, or you just want to go crazy and you want to hit all the ports. You know, you can list any number of ports in there, and it'll hit all of them. You can also add any number of domains you want. Obviously, the more domains you add, it'll increase how long the enumeration will take. This thing can run, you know, for weeks, as we've tested. If you ever find a subdomain that you know is out of scope, then you can blacklist it under the blacklisted section. So just a quick note here, if you do find issues with the wildcard detection, you are detecting a wildcard under a given subdomain, but Amass isn't detecting it and it's throwing off the results. You know, if you want a quick fix, you can add it to the blacklisted section. And then, you know, that'll give us time to actually respond to the issue and, you know, get Amass fixed up again. You know, we can't always be like super responsive, but we try to be as responsive as possible. So yeah, a number of the open source data sources that we pull from support API keys. Some of these are paid for. Some of these are free. I believe Alien Vault is free. Twitter is obviously free. I don't know if we really have any results that we get from Twitter that much, but it'll search tweets for subdomains. You can get Shodan for pretty cheap. But yeah, if you do have any of these, it'll gladly take them and leverage their APIs. If there is, if any of you out there are using, commercial products or even, free products out there that have APIs that, provide subdomain enumeration and you don't see them in Amass already, please open a GitHub issue. We love adding data sources and we love being able to, ingest everything that you want to be able to ingest. And just one final note on this slide is that you can, the API key is like kind of custom to each service. So you can see some of them are username, password, some of them API key and a secret, and some of them are just API key. So the default configuration file will have all the configuration options possible for Amass commented out. It has all of these, so you know which data source requires what kind of API key, what kind of authentication. So that's about it that we have for going through the configuration and the deep dive into how the tool works. Yeah, Amass performs subdomain enumeration in a cyclic manner, and it can really help you guys, find, quote unquote hidden hosts out there, or virtual hosts, or and if anyone has any questions, ideas, future requests, issues, the whole new interface is annoying. Hopefully not. We're very friendly. And please submit an issue or hit us up on the Discord. So yeah, you can get it from GitHub. We have a project page for OWASP. We have Snapcraft packages, which I think is our primary, like, at least from what I gather, most of our users of Kali, Ubuntu, and other Linux distributions tend to primarily use Snapcraft unless they're building from source. If you have Mac, we can also do root apps. We also just have binaries on the GitHub page. So if you have Windows even, I don't think we have a lot of Windows users, but we have some. Grab the binaries. And that's it. Any questions?
Hey, Anthony, this is Jason, and I just wanted to give one of my tips and tricks with Amass. Can you go back to one of the slides with the table that represents where some of the subdomains were found?
From the
There you go. The
enumeration.
Yeah, from the enumeration. Yeah.
For
Anyone. There you go. So for those of you doing bounty huntings, when you finish a run of the enumeration, what it does is from all the sources Amass goes out to, it will categorize them in the bottom at the end of the run in a table. And it says like X names discovered from whatever sources. And I use this table a lot because when I'm a bounty hunter and I get an open scope program, I will run, that open scope program like, Tesla or whatever through Amass, and it'll return all these results that are from the sources. And then when it breaks it down like this, I automatically find the ASN usually for the company that I really didn't go out and grab before. And then I also start getting a feel for how they segregate their cloud traffic, right? Where if are they an Amazon shop, are they an Azure shop or something like that? And how many hosts did I find from just the scraping and the enumeration on the internet, and what ASNs those are in as well. So what I do when I get this table is I just look at the names here and I'm like, okay, well, let's say that this screen is OWASP, and let's pretend that they actually had their own ASN. I used to use the net domains command, and I will use the, now it's, I think, what is the command for net domains now?
Intel. Mass
Intel. Yeah, so I would probably use Amass Intel now to basically scan the whole range for sites that are 443, and that will come back with or 443 and 8080, I think, are the defaults. And what that'll do is it'll go to everything in the ASN range for OWASP or Tesla or something like that, and it will bring back other top-level domains for which I can then run the tool over again using the enum option, and find a whole new set of scraped domains. And so Amass is really, it really feeds into me finding not only subdomains, but regular like top domains. It lets me discover new brands. And then the final iteration of how I use Amass in this section is when I find a cloud, or when I find that an organization is primarily a cloud hosted organization, I'll scan the whole damn AWS range for the keyword of the the target I'm after, right? To try to see, and I'll use that with Intel to try to see if I can find cloud hosted domains that maybe weren't scraped in anywhere, but now I get back via the Intel place. So the summary table out of, I mean, not just like finding the subdomains and stuff like the summary table that enum gives in net domains, which is now Intel, are actually two of my favorite pieces of usage on Amass. So thank you guys for making it. It really helps me. So yeah.
Yeah, thanks for the comments. That was really insightful. Just a quick note about the summary table too. If you have another tool, or if you want to like pipe this tool into something else, you just want to grab the discovered domains. The discovered domains are output on standard out, and everything else is on standard error. So you don't have to worry about handling all the extra nonsense. You can just grab it from standard out if you want to consume it that way. Yeah, any other questions?
We had a few. I think Jeff's been in there kind of answering them via text while we were running.
Yeah, Jeff was pretty active in the chat, in the YouTube chat.
Yeah, let me scroll back and look through here. The question I asked was early on, and I think most people saw it in the chat, was that when you're doing the brute force section, does the tool break it across multiple domain resolvers like MassDNS does, which is kind of one of the first tools to do that? And I think the answer is yes, correct?
Yeah, so all of the resolution goes through the resolver engine, which, like I said earlier, spreads it out across the resolvers you have configured.
Yeah, perfect.
All right, if for folks that are watching on stream, Casey just asked in the chat if anyone has any questions. If anyone has any questions, we've got about 5 more minutes until we're going to go on to or start setting up our next talk. So we've got a few more minutes with the team. So make sure to ask questions. We just had a question. What is BBAC? A lot of people are using that acronym in chat right now. So what is BBAC?
That's not a question for the presenter.
No, so that's a different question then. I don't know what that is then. Is this where I realize like I'm old and out of touch? Let's see if there's any more questions.
One of the questions was, I think this is actually, of a handful of presentations that you two have done, is one of the only ones that'll probably be on video, I think. So people are asking that there's like a lot of config options in here, and there's a lot of like a lot to go on with each of the tools. Is there going to be like is there a wiki associated to the project? And a lot of people are interested in contributing and stuff like that.
Yeah, we have well, we don't have a wiki. We have a user guide on our GitHub. But yeah, I think you can like pull requests if you wanna, if like people want to contribute their own changes. But we're really trying to bolster our documentation, especially with this new release, because it's certainly one of our weak points, especially now that our feature set has grown so much.
You just got one oops, my mic's, there we go. Are users able to add additional resolvers / custom resolvers?
Yes, under the resolver section in the config file.
All right, the resolver
I think,
section in the
you can
config
do it on
file.
yeah, I think you can do it on the command line too.
And the new version is out today now, or when's it coming out?
I think we're going to push it today or tomorrow. I mean, it's
Nice.
currently in the develop branch, so if people want to, if they can't wait, they can build from develop branch. But we're going to push a new release today or tomorrow, I think.
Do like a virtual Oprah where you ask everyone to look under their seats, and there's the new version of OWASP or IMS.
Actually got a separate question. So I got it actually through Discord. So is Amass scope going to stay on discovering kind of domains and subdomains, or are you guys ever thinking about extending it to find virtual hosts? Because a lot of new tools have been coming out to brute force and find virtual hosts for same IP addresses.
We are willing to expand the objectives of this project as long as it seems to be meeting the needs of the same audience, if that answers the question.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think you have two separate audiences here, right? Like red teams and everybody like that, and then you have bug hunters. And I think one of the core things that we're seeing on a lot of hosts is that, like, people host a lot of web servers on same hosts, and part of the challenge is that you're only scraping one virtual host, whereas there's actually many hosted, and there are some tools available for that, but none of them are, I would say, optimized as Amass. So could be something to think about in the future. But yeah.
Yeah, I guess maybe another way to say it, what I'd like to leave everyone with is, as long as it meets the goals for understanding a company's or an organization's internet exposure, or we could just say a target's internet exposure, then I would say it's within scope of the project.
Cool. All right, I think we're good. Thank you, gentlemen, so much for Anthony and Jeff for the intro, and also all the contributors to the tool. Right, I know it's not just you guys, so sometimes the people who come on the line and present are the ones who get like a ton of the credit, but there's a ton of contributors and people who are submitting issues, and it's one of the best open source tools for this. So thank you everyone who's involved in the project. I use it every day, so I really appreciate it. Thanks for coming by, guys. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Jason. Thank you, Bug Crowd. Until next time.
Till next time.